There we go. Hey, you're muted.
All
Hold
right.
on.
See, I got you on. I got you on.
So I actually was on Zoom the whole time, but I didn't realize I didn't have my internet on my phone. Like I use a hotspot for internet, and so I'm sitting here. I'm like,
Okay.
the meeting's like loading, loading, loading. I'm like, what is going on? And I look down. I was like, I don't even have internet. So,
Bless it.
so this is actually the first time I'm doing Zoom. Am I? Do I sound okay? Can you hear
You
me?
sound great. Yeah, you're fine.
I'm super nervous that because I have headphones in, it's not going to record right, but I think I'll be okay. We're just going to have to go for it because Zoom, you just set it to record and let it go, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like 4 a.m. here, so
you can take it and edit it or whatever you want to do.
Okay.
I got you. You're also on Facebook Live right now. So
am I? That's incredible. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Well, so I wanted to thank you so much for coming and talking to me. I know you stay super busy. I've done a lot of research and I've seen that you've kind of been getting interviewed. You've done a lot of podcasts, which is cool. That's one thing I really like about our community. We kind of go hard. So I was able to actually get a lot of info. And so I think it's nice because a lot of the introductory things, when it comes to you, like I'm sure you're probably getting really sick of talking about. And honestly, I think you're kind of well, that's good. I mean, I think you're at a level where a lot of the community is starting to know who you are. And so I know, okay, for everybody who is listening on the show, this is Charlynda Scales. She is the founder and CEO of Much Sauce. Charlynda, you're gonna kill me. I have not tried this sauce yet, so I'm actually on Amazon.
Okay.
I need to figure out a way to get some.
Yeah, we need to get your address so I can send you some.
Yes.
That has to happen.
Well, I had a plan because I have a gift for anybody who comes on my show too. So we'll exchange where we can send stuff, and then we'll go from there after the show. Yeah. So I haven't tried it yet, but I know that it is very popular, especially down south. Charlynda's from Tennessee. But you live in Dayton, Ohio now, which is really cool. I love the fact that you live in Dayton. You were just at Wright State. I used to go there a lot, so we'll talk about that. But
really? Yeah, cool.
Yeah. Wright State was one of my old stomping grounds for a while, so I didn't go there. It was all during high school. But why don't you run us back, Charlynda? I know you served for the Air Force for some time, so before we get ahead of ourselves with everything, I want to ask you. Don't explain your whole career, but just tell us you were in the Air Force. How did that go for you? I know that this kind of took over and it kind of caused you to transition. It wasn't a big plan, but let us know, take us back. What made you sign up for the Air Force and go from there?
Yeah. So my Air Force story is kind of unique, I guess. Well, there's some families that probably really identify with it. We're a 4th-generation military family. We've served in every branch except for the Coast Guard, but we're still recruiting. Look, we're still recruiting them. The
Farrells, right?
Yeah, the Farrell family. Mm-hmm. And so I'm so glad you did your research, Kyle. I just love this. Okay, right. So yeah, I wanted to actually just go to college and study business. I just wanted to go to college, really, and I actually was a jock. I wanted to run track. Okay. When I got to college. So the military was not in the forefront of my mind. I was actually the 3rd grandkid. So the discussion usually began around age 16 of not like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Like, what branch do you want to go into when you grow up? And I'm like, not me. I'm like the 3rd in line. I'm not going in. So I have my cousins, Carlos and DeWine. Hey, y'all. DeWine actually went into the Marine Corps, and he was in boot camp, and I remember texting him while he was at boot camp at Paris Island. I was at science camp. And he's like, I ate an apple in 5 seconds. I'm like, what? I dissected a frog today. So I just knew that he had fulfilled this requirement for my generation to go into the military. So it's like there's someone in every generation who has served. That's basically what that means. And so he was my generation. And so I was like, no sweat. I'm going to college. I'm running track. It's great. And then and I also played soccer in the fall to condition myself for spring track. So my senior year, the very first game of soccer, I tore my ACL apart in the first game.
That's right.
And so, yeah. Yeah. So all of the scouts, all the scouts for track, everybody went away. It was at first she's going to be this athlete that's going to, play in college, and now it was just anybody. Bueller, anybody want me? Nobody. Okay.
Yeah, that's rough.
And I had to basically put that was like my first test of emotional resiliency, because my mom had to pull me back together. Like, you have a purpose. It's not just sports. You're not just sports.
We have. Was that a Clemson that you went to play soccer?
I actually, when I made it to Clemson, I ended up being on the rowing team, and then I ran track. I did pentathlon. Dang. So yeah. So after she said, pull yourself back together, there was also hey, we need to talk about the fact that you told me that you're not paying for school. Like, you saved nothing. She's a baby boomer. She didn't have anything to save for me to go to school. So I have to make it. I knew that when I went into high school. I have to make it some kind of way. Mm-hmm. And now I'm looking at the military.
Okay.
So that's the beginning of my story.
You guys sound like Catholics with when you turn 16, it's time, for Catholics, you get confirmed. But that was like the big thing with my family when I was 16, was you gotta get confirmed. So that's just what I was thinking of. It's almost like that, or it's like an arranged marriage situation your family's got with the military. That's really interesting.
Hey,
I like that story because, everybody else, like a lot of people, the way they say they joined, it's always, I guess you still had the same sort of reasons at the end of the day, but like, it's just a different story.
Yeah.
Well, my cousin was expecting to go, so I didn't think I was going. Like,
what? I was hardcore, like, rooting for Dewan. I'm like, you're gonna make it. I'm pen paling him. I'm writing him like, yes. Do it for the whole generation.
Man, so.
But the reason why I ended up doing the military as my option was because when he went on active duty after Paris Island, they took him out to like cold weather training. Like they take you out. He's like, I'm using skis. I've never skied in my whole life. We're on a mountain on skis. I don't know what's happening. Yeah. And he had an accident and hurt himself, like fell on a rock, and it gave him a seizure. So he got medically disqualified. He's fine now. He got medically disqualified, and I went back to my grandpa. I said, well, he did serve. He said, no, you need to retire. I'm like, why are you adding these rules? Like,
this was grandpa that we got mud sauce from, right? Before.
Yeah, so my granddad was in Korean Vietnam.
Yeah.
He was like 20-something years, retired, So that was his definition, like, go the whole way. Of course, he doesn't say that till the last minute, but to go the whole way is what he really meant. So,
you guys had to have had a unique
so I was sitting in class.
I'm sure.
We do. Yeah. I loved him. I was like his little sidekick, and we would take a lot of walks together, and that's how I learned a lot about him, was on taking walks with him.
For anyone that doesn't know, Charlynda was given the recipe from her grandfather for mud sauce. Didn't know what to do with it at all. But I just think it's very significant that a lot of people get whatever in the will or different things, from relatives when they go, and Charlynda got a recipe. And so I want to kind of talk about, I feel like I know so much about the process of how you got there, but some of my listeners might not. Can you tell us about mud sauce a little bit? I want to, you can talk about the call sign thing, and then I really want to hit on the SCORE program and how that was able to help you turn mud sauce into what it is today. So if we can kind of like shift into that, because then I want to ask you a lot about Orlando and like what you're doing in the future. I'm all about the forward progression not so much about what was in the past. So
we're going to talk. Look,
yeah.
I am going to give you whatever you asked for this morning. I want everyone and all my followers to see that it is 7 o'clock my time. It is like 4 his time. So it meant so much to me that you
I get up and
did
hustle.
this. Like,
I love life.
I'm grateful. So
me too.
Yeah, so let's start with the story of mud sauce, how it came to be. My grandfather, we talked about Charlie Farrell, he came up with this recipe in 1956, like when he was finally done tinkering around like 100 times. He came up with a recipe based off of his passion for food. He did not like people being wasteful with condiments. So I tell people, like I was at WSU last night, I said, all of the inventions and companies that you've seen have probably started because someone had a problem and they wanted to solve it. And so he had a problem with people being wasteful with condiments. And so he tried to solve it by creating an all-purpose sauce. And so, yeah, he poured his heart into this perfect blend of flavors. My family grew up on it. When I was growing up, I actually have my own version because I have a pepper allergy. I can't eat pepper, like black pepper. Like, don't put pepper on my food.
Really?
I don't want to.
That's scary.
Yeah, right. But it's like I don't know if have you ever seen The Princess Bride? Have you ever seen that movie, The Princess Bride?
It's been a long
so it's like
time.
The guy who's like, I spent years eating poison to build my tolerance for the poison. That's why I didn't die. So I still eat pepper food. Just want to put it out there that I taste every single production of mud sauce myself. I walk in super high on Benadryl, but I do it. So mud sauce got its name from my grandfather, whose call sign was Mutt from Korean Vietnam. So military people have call signs, usually from some characteristic that they have. He could blend in anywhere. They called him Mutt. And so that's how I got the name. My uncle Dwayne suggested that I use that because it was a perfect symbolism for the sauce as well, because it blends in with anything. And my uncle is a chef. I am not. I trusted him, and that is how we got to the name Mutt's Sauce. So,
that story.
Yeah, so that's how we got to Mutt's Sauce. And we just wanted to kind of, when I learned in 2013, I was serving active duty. I was at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio, serving in the Air Force because I eventually did go on active duty myself. And I told my mom, it's like, we haven't had this sauce in years. Like, he passed away in 2005, unfortunately, from cancer. And people didn't know who had inherited it. Did he leave it to anybody? Did he talk to anybody before he passed about it? And Mom said he gave me a piece of paper and told me to give it to you right before he passed. And when I opened it, it was the original, handwritten in his handwriting, the original recipe, the only copy.
Did you get any stink from anybody? Like, was there anybody who was kind of like upset that you got it and they didn't? I mean, maybe
I
not.
think
You don't
it's natural for people.
Yeah,
I think it's natural for people to wonder, like
why?
What, why I even go through that. I'm like, why me, and then there's the why not me, and that naturally happens with anybody, especially when someone you love passes away and they leave no explanation.
Yeah,
but I think that the Farrell family, we're very resilient. How we are very tight-knit family. So I took it upon myself to sit down with them and say, hey, I know that this happened. I know how much this means to everyone. How can I make this work eventually for everybody? I'm very much like a one team, one fight. This is about taking care of the family. I'm pretty sure that that's what he had in mind, if I could guess. And I was learning at the same time from SCORE, and we'll talk about that, but they were saying you can't copyright or trademark a recipe. So people out there in the food world, you know, be mindful of your vernacular when you're talking to people about what your plans are for your company. And you say, well, yeah, I'm going to trademark or copyright you can't do that. It's not possible. It's not legally possible. You can't do it. So when you have a recipe, the only thing that you can do is do a trade secret agreement and physically lock the recipe away. So the whole thing about the Coca-Cola vault is actually true. You have to lock that sucker away.
That's good to know.
You have to sequester people. Yeah, you have to like compartmentalize the people who know parts of the recipe, because nobody should know the whole thing. That's dangerous.
Yeah.
So that's you know, they haven't figured out a way to do that for recipes yet. Somebody in the USPTO needs to figure that out, like U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. So if you want to do a trademark of your logo for your food company, go to uspto.gov. Okay.
You trademarked your logo?
Mm-hmm.
Were you worried that someone
Mud sauce with my grandfather's face?
Yes.
And mud sauce is an official American trademark.
And was that something that you learned, like you learned about trademarking, and you learned what you needed to get trademarked probably just through building it all and learning and getting mentorship and stuff? Or
yeah, I mean, I'm definitely hungry for knowledge. Like, I constantly leave myself open to learn new things, and I would tell anybody in entrepreneurship, be a sponge, you know. Don't ever get to the point where you're just so like full of yourself that you don't want to listen to people, because there's always something to learn. There's always somebody doing it better than you that you can learn from. There's always something you can do better. So I've always been that way since I was a kid. I want to learn everything. Tell me everything. I want all the knowledge. I know I'll never attain it. It will never fit. It'll never all fit in here. But I want to still learn. I want to still open myself up to learn, Kyle. So
yeah.
When I went to
go ahead. We're in an age of information, and I was going to ask you if you were always that way, or if this is something that you grew into. Because for me, somewhere in my early adulthood, I stopped thinking that I needed to know more. For some reason, I felt like I got to a point where I thought I knew everything. Like you said, I stopped becoming a sponge. And
you thought you knew everything, huh?
If you read my bio, like I took myself to a very low place getting out of the Army. And a lot of it was due to that. It was because I closed all my mental doors to anything outside. I closed off my reality. I stopped like letting myself grow, essentially. So it's good that you've always been that way. I can't say I always have. I guess I have. I fell lost somewhere. When I was
I tell people, like, it's not just a hunger for knowledge, but it's also humility, Cal. I mean, this is something that people in this day and age are starting to learn, and I think more of our top entrepreneurs are being vocal about how that is actually a success trait. You can learn it, you can practice it, but my grandfather told me humility will take you farther than money. And I tell people that all the time. Humility will take you farther than money. Never get in the mindset that you know more than another person, or there's a job that is beneath you, or there's a task that is, not worth your time. You know, I remember even being a captain, and one of my memories was the kitchen and the office was dirty. It was like overflowing with people's old food and stuff, and I'm like, I walked past it, and it's the command building. It's where the generals, it's on the way to the general's office. So I'm like, I don't want to smell hot garbage on the way to the general's office. I am his commander's action group, the CAG chief. I'm his right hand person as far as staffing and things like that. So I am sitting there at 4 o'clock. It was like 4:30 in the evening. I usually finished up around 8, and all of my enlisted troops would go home. But I was like, you know what? I'm just not going to say anything to anybody, but tonight's task is going to be to clean that whole kitchen. Normally, an officer would say, look, Sergeant so-and-so, go scrub it smells nasty. I was there to probably like 10 o'clock at night, and I watched as people were leaving the office, and even the troops were like, Captain, like, that's not your job. I'm like, who says that's not my job? I work in this office. I serve the same person. It's my job too. So it's not, it's that mentality of nothing is beneath you. There's nothing, you're not. I know that there's so much that I still need to learn. Even when people are coming to me asking me for advice, I still have a Rolodex of people I have yet to learn from, or I'm still trying to learn from.
Yeah, but I mean, you also, I think, if you just remind yourself to teach based off of what you've experienced, because you've already experienced so much that you're already sort of levels ahead of a lot of people. But it's like, yeah, you still have a lot to learn, but I think you still have a lot to offer too, in a sense of like helping others. You're kind of like a book of resources, just given your experience. So basically, you took this recipe. I know when you were getting out of the Air Force, and I would assume most of the rest of your life before that, you never really anticipated running a company, or you weren't always like an entrepreneur at heart, I guess, correct? I mean, this all just sort of took off on you. How did that come about?
Kyle, I'm flying by the seat of my pants, darling. I am, it's just,
it's one of those things that happen,
I don't know if there's supposed to be, I don't know if there's supposed to be a degree for it, or, there's a path for it, but, a lot of us are driven by a problem. We have a problem, we want to solve it. And for mine, it was, I have a problem with the fact that I'm the only one. If I just take this recipe and sit in my house and make the sauce for myself, yum, 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 it's great, that doesn't bring me joy. What would bring me joy is to share it with other people and to let them have the memories that I've had, because mud sauce is not just like I had a good meal. There are family memories tied to this sauce. So I want to replicate that feeling for other people. It's not fair to hoard this to myself.
Right. That's cool.
So that is what motivated me to say, I don't know how to start a company, but I'm going to go to score.org, and I'm going to find my local chapter, and I'm going to walk into the Dayton office and say, I have a handwritten recipe of a sauce from my grandfather, and I want to share it with other people. How do I do that? And they said, well, let's translate that to business terms. You have a food recipe that you would like to manufacture for other people's consumption and eventually turn into a retail product that you can see on the grocery shelves. That's what they do. They translate that stuff for you into business terms and help you chart a path to starting your own business.
And for anyone that doesn't know what SCORE is, this is actually one of the biggest reasons I was excited to talk to Charlynda, because obviously Veteran Growth Podcast, we're all about veterans being able to just overcome whatever obstacles they're facing, transitioning, starting a business, whatever the case may be. So score.org is a free resource to veterans that I am actually personally kind of obsessed with. I actually haven't signed up yet because
I'm obsessed too.
I want to sign up for my podcast. I want to sign up for some of the businesses I'm working with. It's like, what do I sign up for? But needless to say, I'll let Charlynda touch more on her experience with SCORE, but it's a free resource where you can get mentorship in your area. And basically, I wanted to kind of paint an image of what your mentors did for you through the process, because for not visioning this to become a business and then seeing how great of a business it's flourishing into is really impressive to me, because I know being an entrepreneur is not easy, and you have to really want to be an entrepreneur to get yourself through some of the hurdles that it brings. So how was SCORE able to kind of help you bridge that gap, and what resources did they provide? I've heard some of the resources they provided you. It sounded amazing. I know they gave you sort of like a list of just what you have to do. I mean, it was very simple. It almost seemed just a lot of work.
So
easy.
Yeah. So I share, Kyle, I share your love for SCORE. Like, they are amazing. They are free. I say free 99. They are free, guys. Like, it's
Free.
not like, you know, when you go to someone, you're like, hey, can I help you? Yes, I'm a consultant, so-and-so, and here's my $5,000 bill for a startup that has no money. Like, I cannot stand blood-sucking consultants sometimes. Okay, there are great ones. There are great ones. I know great ones. But there are some among them that is just like, you're going to be broke. You're going to be broke. And SCORE is free. I walked in, I had this consultation with them, told them what I had and my idea. I want to share it. They're super patient. I will say my consultant, he was a SCORE mentor. His name is John Suter, and I love him. He was, I think, in his 70s at the time. He was retired from owning a few businesses. And it was kind of almost, I have to say, it was almost like sitting down with my granddad. It was like sitting down with my granddad and having him run me through the plan. And I tried not to get emotional because the emotions were so fresh.
Yeah.
And it's like every time he mentioned him, I was like, oh, okay. You know, he's like, trust me, I got you. He said, I can imagine like what this man, they were about the same age. They really were. Like,
it's almost like your grandfather had sort of a bigger plan in mind.
Yeah, it's like if my grandfather had not, I think he prematurely passed. Had he not had the cancer, he would have been the same age as my SCORE mentor, who was sitting down with me, running me through this. So, you know, it was more, I think, John didn't realize it was more than just him being a SCORE mentor. It was like, this is what I wish I could have had with my grandfather, is that someone just tell me what to do. You know, tell me what to do.
And
he did. He did. He sat down. He was so patient. He said, you need to learn about food process, those like things like food process authority. You need to have the pH balance of your tomato-based product tested to make sure you know how to properly make it for people who would consume it in public. So there's like all this sciencey stuff, and the business, file for your business license. So he gave me the list and he would call me. And then he did me a solid. He said, I'm going to find someone who's doing what you want to do, but they are already like 5 steps ahead of you with a packaged product. And he sought out this lady who had a salsa that was made locally. And she said, everything in the process of making salsa is the same thing as making any tomato-based sauce. So she said, I've lived in this area for multiple years. Her name was Peggy Heim Bellamy, a bit of a bite salsa. She gave me every contact she had. Like, she just handed over her whole Rolodex, her co-packer, her CPA, like every contact she had built over time, all of the research that she had done, the trial and error, she did all of it and just said, I'm going to save you about 10 years.
It's all about who you know, right? I mean,
yeah. And she was just like, here. So people see the story of Mutt Sauce, like you went from a paper recipe to a co-packaged product being sold in 4 months. So July 2013 was the conversation with my mother to get the recipe. December was the launch party of the first product line.
13?
Like, that's insane. Yeah, December 2013. Like, that's just insane.
That is.
I mean, even for me, I look back and I'm like, that's insane for a packaged product. Like,
it would take me that long just to get the labels.
I was just, well, you know, and there were so many people that I met along the way. It's like once you start voicing your dream, it's like everything just starts coming together. I met a young man. His name was Rashawn Saunders. He had this startup called the 937 Group. He was a designer, a graphic designer. He had been working some contracts with the local Hilton. And so I sat with him and I said, I need a label. I need a design for my logo. And I told him the story of my grandfather. And as I did that, he was at his computer doing design. And I gave him a picture of my grandfather. And then right after I was done, he said, how's this? And what you see, the trademark logo, was his very first try.
Really? Wow. I love when things like that happen. Like, one of the things that I think most people miss out on is when you get to create a company or a brand or music or anything that is yours and you're putting out to the world. This podcast, for example, there's so many little fun quirks that go into getting to decide like what to choose and like what to do, what steps to take, because it's literally like you're creating something from nothing. So you have this vision, you don't know how it's going to get built, but you see it. And then the middle part, if you can learn to just love and enjoy that process, you'll have great moments like that the whole rest of your life. And I think that's the most beautiful thing about entrepreneurship. That's cool. I didn't know that story about I knew the logo was your grandfather and everything. I just didn't know that was like the first shot. So
it's very first try. Rashawn listened
group.
And he did it. And the 937 group, cool. I think he's gone on to do big things, but I've always retained him. I don't talk about him much. So here's your shout out, Rashawn. Rashawn has stayed with me since the beginning. If you guys see new designs or anything, like it always comes from Rashawn.
It sounds good. I have to add him on Instagram. Do you know his Instagram handle? That way I can tag him.
Let me see. I think it might be now like Rashawn Saunders Graphics or something, but 937 group I think is still there.
Okay, good deal. Yeah, I like to be able to tag people so they see that you talk to them about them. Yeah. So the SCORE program basically holds your hand through whatever process you're going through now. For anyone listening to the podcast, the SCORE program, I'm pretty sure it is just related to building a business. I don't think they have mentorship related to many other things, but it is completely free. And when I say business, I mean I could go and get mentorship from my podcast, probably even through the SCORE program. So just go and see what they offer, because they offer a whole lot of stuff. Their website's very simple. It's very easy to figure out, your location compared to what they have in that area. So just check it out. It's score.org. We're going to kind of keep pushing the train along. We got plenty of time still. Well, actually, we've been going for like 35 minutes now, but
time flies.
I know. This is like the first podcast that I've had to like really check the time. But so I want to get into congratulations on Mud Sauce, by the way. I'm excited to see where it goes. I'm excited to see it on shelves everywhere. Tell us about, you just got a very recent deal, correct? That's pretty big. So I want to hear about that, and then I want to get into Nick Orlando before we wrap things up. So,
my gosh, So let's go back, I guess, to 2017. I had gone to MIC. I'd gone to Military Influencer Conference 2017 with my sister, Molly Mae Potter, who was Miss Veteran America 2016. She said, we need to learn what it means to be a military influencer. They have this conference called Military Influencers. So let's go check it out.
It's like, do we all go there? There's nothing
like, what is this?
Yeah.
So we went to Dallas. It was in Dallas, Texas, and we learned a lot. We learned a lot about how to harness your experience as a veteran or as a veteran entrepreneur, and how to do good in the world. How to make a bigger impact using skills you already have and experience you already have. So coming off of that, we all got put in a group. So there's a Facebook group for all of us now. And someone had put in there that there was a Bob Evans Award. They're like, hey, it's the last day for the Bob Evans Award, guys, apply. And I said, let me just go in here and see what I have. So I actually used my Kickstarter video because it was the very last day. I didn't have time to make a video. I went in and filled out what my business plan was, and I inserted a 2-year-old Kickstarter video.
That's the beauty of content, though.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know if this will fly. They'll probably be like, she looks a lot different. So yeah, how about I was in Washington, D.C., and I got this. I was like, it's a weird number, and I usually don't answer it, but on this situation, I answered. I was like, yes, hello. They said, hi, this is Damon John. I'm like,
I'm sorry,
like Damon John? like what? And so yeah, it was him. He was saying, I'm personally congratulating all the Bob Evans Farms heroes and CEOs, grand prize winners. You were one of 3. And congratulations, and you're going to meet us in New York so we can hand you a check. And I'm like, what is happening?
Now, that was in 2017.
Mm-hmm. That was October of 2017. So after that,
so not bad. Yeah, that was.
Yeah, it's like I think that a lot of the awareness of Mud Sauce and the exposure that we got as a company, and then myself as an entrepreneur, just kind of took off from there. They even went as far as to put us on and our faces are still on the food packages until November 11th. If you go to the Bob Evans Farms grocery, anything that they make in the grocery store, our faces are on the food. It's like really crazy.
That veggies, is that a part of it too, or is that something different?
Yes, Vet Veggies and Fan Food, the Fan Food app by Carson Goodale, are both those inaugural winners. So they said one of three. Those are the other two.
Okay.
Vet Veggies is owned by Jerry Martin, who's an Army veteran, and then Carson Goodale is a first lieutenant in the reserves.
Nice. Okay, so I didn't know if those were the other winners or if those were like people that were partnering with Bob Evans. Yes, I didn't know how to organize, but that's really cool.
Yeah.
No. So you basically, I mean, not taking away all the amount of work you've had in front of you, and at the pace that you got this stuff launched and everything, it's incredible. Especially getting into like the food market, because that's something that a lot of people probably don't know a whole lot about until they get into it. So for you to do this, in the time you've done it, there's no question that your work ethic is tenfold. But what I really want to point out to people is, and you said this earlier about just being actively engaged into like your vision and what you want to do with something. But what I really wanted to point out was the fact that all these things happen by you simply just like seeking it and not being afraid to get help and not being afraid to make calls or emails or whatever. And a lot of the stick I get from people who I've ever talked to who are thinking about starting something, it always comes down to their fear of like reaching out to people. And I really want to highlight that because you seem
Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, it started with, you have this recipe, you're not sure what to do with it. You want to help carry on this legacy. Like it's the least you can do for your grandfather. You guys had a very special bond. Now the family's kind of got this pressure on you. So, but it's still, I mean, there still could be enough that would have held you back from never checking out SCORE or like never seeing this Bob Evans opportunity. So what can you tell veterans that are not slacking, but are having trouble finding like purpose?
No slacking, y'all.
Yeah, like when they get out and they just get these slumps, they can't find a good job, they're just not happy.
Yeah.
What would your encouragement be at that point?
Fear is so powerful, and it has held so many people back from being what they were destined to be. I think everyone has a gift, and the gift that they have is beyond their own comprehension. And sometimes people's gift is so big that it intimidates them. It's like, okay, this is too awesome. I am afraid to walk down this path because it just seems like there's too much good stuff that could happen that will change my whole life and will pull me out of my comfort zone. And it was a slow process, I think, of pulling me away from that feeling of fear. Like, I'm going to show you what happens when you walk on the other side of being afraid to start this while you're active duty. I'm going to show you what's on the other side of being afraid to fail your family. Show you what's on the other side of being afraid to move. I was a milspouse, so I moved away from my company for a couple of years, but kept it going because they're like, you never stop. I'm like, no, I flew back and forth every single month from Washington, D.C. to Ohio for 2 years to keep my company going. So, there are things that are on the other side of fear that are so great and so fantastic that it's not meant for you to see it right then, because it might be so great that will make you afraid to move forward. Oh my God, what do I do? How do I handle that? If someone would have said, if you keep going, eventually there will be a call with Damon John and you're going to get a check for 25 grand. Basically, how much that you put up of your own money to bootstrap the business will be given back to you in less than 2.5 years, like full cash. Like you're dreaming of when you're going to get your money back, and there's a check for you if you just keep going. And so you're just like, so the trick is, you know, if I would have been told that, I mean, how would it have changed my decision making if I would have known that? It's not meant for us to know what's on the other side of the fear. It's meant for us to just keep pushing past it, and having the faith of knowing that whatever it is, it's good. Yeah. Whatever it is.
Or at least if it's not good right then and there, it's going to teach you something that you didn't know before. You just have to have, like you said, have open arms to that fear and that anxiety that of the unknown.
Yeah.
Especially if you're putting in the right amount of work too. The universe has like this really strange way of paying you right back. So it's creepy.
You know, I say that there's something unique about veterans, and I haven't, you know, I usually tend to not give myself credit for being, you know, something that gave me an advantage, but I do think that being military gives us an advantage. I have to admit that.
I agree 100%.
You know, we are super resilient in a way. Like we have been conditioned for entrepreneurship because the same resilience that it takes to go from one mission to another through the ups and downs of an assignment and PCSs and deployments, all that emotional resiliency that we have to have just to survive being in the military and being military members and thriving in that environment and doing well amongst the competition of our peers. I mean, take you out of your uniform, put you in a company. It's the same. It is the same. The difference is not everybody has that level of resilience. They don't know what to do with those emotions. They don't know what to do when you hit rock bottom. Rock bottom just looks different. It's the same. It just looks different. It might be money. I'm not making any money this month, you know, but your rock bottom in your uniform is someone in your unit committed suicide, or, you know, something. It's still the same. It's just going to have a difference. It's going to be remixed, but it's the same emotional resiliency that you need to pick yourself up and keep going.
Yeah.
Because people depend on you.
It's a lot of the motivation behind this show too. Is I go on these rants a lot too. They're not recorded, thank goodness. But I mean, I'll go on these rants and think about recording them, and it's really just this idea of like I'll get into saying like, okay, think about basic training. Think about all these intense situations that you've had to learn how to handle. I mean, I remember one of the worst days for me in basic training was the grenade range. Because you have your whole entire company of kids you don't trust who are acting like idiots the whole time. And then you get in these little trailers. And on drill sergeants, I don't know how the Air Force was, but in the Army, the drill sergeants are very, very smart. And when we do big things like this that are already scary, they make them 10 times more chaotic for us so that we learn how to handle stress on top of stress, essentially.
Yes.
So that thing scared the shit out of me because you're shoulder to shoulder in these little trailers. You're getting yelled at over a loudspeaker, and they slap 2 grenades right on your chest and tell you got to hold them and sit there like that. They're not live. The pins are in them and everything, but you hold your 2 grenades to your chest and you're shoulder to shoulder just going to the door. They got a drill sergeant kicks open the door. You fly out and throw your 2 grenades. But the idea was you don't trust all these people around you. So it's like everybody's holding 2 live grenades, and it's pretty intense. And one of my biggest goals was with this show is to like remind veterans, because some of us have been out for a long time, like the civilian world takes over, you know, we forget, I think, and I get so much passion to remind people like where you came from with your military background. It's that the training is just second to none, and the experience, like you said, with all this different things that we have to worry about while we're active and while we're serving. Yeah, if people could just remember that when they're in a time of fear, or if they're afraid of messaging somebody on Instagram and be like, you know, why are you scared of them? Who knows? They might say no to whatever your offer is, but if you're working hard, like, there's a good chance they'll say yes. Successful people, you know, to me, in my opinion, I've never really met a successful person who wasn't open to helping somebody that,
Oh, right.
like works for it. So, yeah.
And some of them are seeking someone, don't,
To help.
and I have to say, there's this myth about mentorship sometimes that, they just want to mentor anybody. Like sometimes they are specifically they're seeking out someone to mentor. Not everybody is someone they want to mentor, but I mean, you don't know if you're that person.
Yeah.
Unless you put yourself out there. You don't know if you're that person that they've been looking for unless you put yourself out there. But yeah, I would say, and I would say harness the power of LinkedIn, because I've made so many great connections on LinkedIn. People who are just like, I saw your story, and they're like, you look at the connection, where it's just like first, second, or third. They're like the fourth removed, but
Really?
they saw a video link from somebody, and then they want to help you, and then they want to figure out how to help you out. So
LinkedIn isn't just a place to go to find a job either. I mean, LinkedIn is really like, it's like the Facebook, but instead of everybody being conflicted about drama or politics, it's all about business. So it's like people are looking at your posts to see how they can help benefit you more than like judging you. So LinkedIn's definitely a different culture. It's very lucrative if you are a business owner, if you're trying to do business with people, essentially. So, and we got a lot of hustlers that are going to be on this podcast, and a lot of hustlers that are going to be listening to the podcast. So I know LinkedIn will be big for most of this community on this show. But so I want to ask you really quick before we get out of here, do you have any serious like routines in your life? I mean, is there anything specifically that you would encourage others to do that has definitely made your life easier or better? I mean, how are you continuing to grow? Like, how are you gaining? Because I know that you're constantly going to be learning because you're a business owner, and in my opinion, you're a young business owner, because I see very, very big pictures. I see like 20, 30, 40 year time spans. And so I know there's going to be a lot that you're still going to be like lost in the sauce, literally, relating to. But what are you doing right now to keep up? Like, are you big into physical activity? Like, do you read? I mean, do you have like a serious morning routine, or are you just staying humble and grateful? And
I'm just super grateful. I'm just super grateful.
That's cool.
Well, I'm a very sporadic person, meaning like I've never really conquered the routine. I'll have them, but they'll be like for 30 days.
That's good to know that it's possible to be that way and still be successful, in my opinion. So
I'm definitely not like the 5 a.m. yoga and meditation person. Like that's not me. But I do make sure that I'm constantly counting my blessings. I'll look at every situation and say, this is really crazy, but like, what's the good that came out of it? Or I'm definitely a silver linings person. Some people say you're just a really sick optimist. Like the building's on fire, but we're warm, y'all. Like, no.
I get it. It's good to have somebody around that's like that, though, because I think that honestly, that's how we should all be. So don't be shy.
Yeah. Things that I do though, let's see. I used to really be big in working out. Like when I say I was a jock, I'm not saying that as like, hey, as stereotyping. I really was. Like sports was everything to me, and tearing my ACL was devastating. I came back and did crew, and I did pentathlon at Clemson. But after that, I ran track and field for the Air Force for a number of years, about 6 years. Nice. I love to run. I love to sprint.
Air Force, y'all are fast too, because when I was learning Mandarin in the Army, I was in California at the language school, Presidio Monterey, and we had the Commanders Cup. We had the Commanders Cup every year, and it was Army versus Navy versus Air Force versus Marines. We had these running teams comprised of male and female teams, and boy, the Air Force whooped us every year. Like they were fast. We beat them about everything else though, so we let them have running.
Oh my gosh.
But sorry, so yeah, you were big into
well,
athletics.
it's very interesting you say that, because it's like, oh my gosh, you so you like languages?
Well, so I joined the Army as a cryptologic linguist. So I was essentially like a decoder, but it wasn't necessarily by choice. It was just the only intel job that they told me was available. And so I scored well, and I knew I wanted to do something that just was above myself, like you were saying earlier. So yeah, I went in as a cryptologic linguist. I had to take another test, the D-Lab, which is like a language aptitude. Did really well on that. And then they placed me in Mandarin with 17 other kids. And if you get below an 80% on any of the tests, which we tested every week, you're done. And I got a 78 on a listening test about 8.5, 9 months into the program.
Oh my God.
And we only had a year and 3 months to be fluent, so we were almost done. And I got kicked out and got reclassed to a supply specialist for the remainder of my Army contract.
Oh my God.
So they took my smarts and
talk
just
about resiliency.
Like
resiliency. How do you just you keep going, right? So how do you push past stuff like that when it's like, I have a plan, like this is my plan?
And then I had a 6-year contract too. So when it all switched, then it was like, I got all these years. It ended up being a great career. I ended up trying to learn as much as I could about logistics, which is, as you know now, is a very important industry. So
very.
So I got a good, got a good resume builder from it, but certainly wasn't the route I had anticipated when I joined. But we're here now, so I'm grateful.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
See, I mean, it's just like,
Are you going to
never know.
Or are you going to the Military Influencer Conference next year? I think it's in DC.
Oh yes. So we did
I'll be there.
Come back obviously to MIC Orlando, which was fantastic. USAA and Comcast, NBC, Universal came in as the big time sponsors with Sam Adams and like 10 other companies, and just poured a bunch of funding. Yeah, it is twice as big as last year, and because it's going to DC next year, it's going to be insane.
I'm going. So, I plan to be there next year. I'm excited.
Well, I'm telling you, the VIP tickets and half of the hotel rooms are already, you better get it.
I'll probably get my stuff next month, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's hard because I'm in Cali, so it's really hard to buy that stuff. And then, because I still work a 9 to 5, there's all these like little factors that I'm scared to just buy the ticket and, if something doesn't work out. But I think by next year I should, be in a place where I'll be able to go just fine. So I'm excited. I'm going to buy my ticket. If I can't go.
Get your ticket. Yeah. I'm telling you, I am a backwards planner. That I think that has been a constant since as long as I can remember.
You kind of have to sometimes.
I am a backwards planner, so I might not have everything in place, but there are things like I'll do it now and then figure it out later. So my first production, I announced a launch party and I didn't even have a product. I didn't have the bottles weren't even made yet. So I'm like, hey, I'm going to be an exhibitor at MIC Orlando. And then I'm like, I've never been a out of Ohio exhibitor before. I'll figure it out though. So you see everybody get excited. It's like, oh my gosh, she's an exhibitor. My team was like, oh my God, how do we do this? Like, we don't know, but you figure it out. I'm paid for my exhibitor fee and we got 6 months to figure it out.
And then it was a blast to do it, I'm sure.
Yeah, and then it was like the best experience ever. So that's, I'm telling you, get the ticket and figure it out. Figure it out later.
That kind of revolves around pushing yourself into that, that uncomfortable feeling of it's it's what you have to do. It's in the military, it's like the uncomfortable things. You got people sitting there forcing you to do it, telling you and showing you this is what you have to do. But in the civilian world, those uncomfortable situations, you kind of just have to take them on your own. And like you said, you didn't know what you're supposed to do to get there, but you knew that you had to do that. So did it, got that done. And then it's like the next step, yeah, it's unknown, but like you just know that you're going to be fine through that process. You're just going to handle it. So we need to get more Charlynda scales out to the world so this veteran community can just keep thriving and growing and learning. I want to just thank you. It was an incredible experience to get to talk to you this morning. Started my Friday off so well. Wake up at 4 in the morning. I'm about to go get to the gym, go to work. It's going to be a great weekend. So I want to definitely, I have to contact you next time I make it home because, you know, I claim Cincinnati, Ohio. So I get close to you a lot. So next time I'm in town, you know, I have to see what you're up to, come see if I can get my eyes on some of the cool, the operation of what sauce. I don't know. So, but yeah, we'll stay connected. It certainly was an absolute pleasure to talk to you. I will leave the floor to you if you have any last words or anything you want to spill to anybody listening or anybody out there. But if you're good to go.
Yeah. I would just say, you know, guys, like, I believe in you. I think sometimes the most powerful thing that you can tell a person is that you love them or that you believe in them. And so there are many people who are out there struggling. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to push past that fear. They just need someone to say that. I think my grandfather handing me the recipe was his way of saying, I believe in you. So I will say that to anybody who needs to hear this today, that I believe in you.
We believe in you.
You can do this. Yes, Kyle and I.
All right.
We believe in it.
This has been an incredible episode. You guys tuned into episode 4 of the Veteran Growth Podcast. It's my first ever interview doing it on Zoom. So I'm confident we'll get it out and it'll be okay and everything will be sound. So everybody should be able to find it on Anchor, YouTube. You can find it on the website, veterangrowthpodcast.com/episodes. I'll be blogging about Charlynda. I know you actually are featured in Forbes now. You can say that as a person. You're featured in Forbes.
Yeah.
So I'll be putting out a blog explaining all the madness that's happening in your life. You know, I'll give some links and things so people can keep reading about you because I want your story to keep growing. I'm excited to see. I know Mud Sauce just got a new look. Like you guys are you're continuing to strive. Look for Mud Sauce in your local stores everywhere soon enough. I mean, it's not everywhere yet, but it will be. I'm confident. So, Charlynda, it was a great pleasure. I wish you nothing but the best weekend, and I look forward to meeting you at least next year in Orlando, if not before. So,
all right.
I appreciate it. Have a great weekend. We'll see you.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.